Hello everyone and welcome to episode 16 of the PvM Hub. If you're unfamiliar with the series, these are a collection of beginner-friendly revolution guides geared towards teaching the very basics of RuneScape 3 PvM. These guides are by no means optimal, but simply a good starting off point for those hoping to get into RuneScape 3 bossing. Today we'll be looking at the follow-up to the Dagnauth Kings and the Queens of Anachronia, the Rex Matriarchs. The Rex Matriarchs are 3 separate bosses put into one boss fight. However, you don't have to fight them all at once, and you don't even need to fight all of them if you don't want to. Each of the Rex Matriarchs have their own attack style as well as mechanics, and they each have their own unique weakness that I really suggest taking advantage of. Their biggest draws are the pieces of the Lanika's Spear, and the upgrade to the Dagnauth rings, the Stalker, Reaver, Channeler, and Champions rings. As always, these videos will be split into a couple different parts, those being the recommendations and requirements, setting up your revolution bar, the important facts and mechanics of the fight, and then a full fight breakdown. Looking at requirements, you can see that all you need is access to Anachronia. If you're wondering how to get there besides the portal at War's Retreat, they are located directly behind the Anachronia base camp, but unfortunately you'll have to go the long way around. For recommendations, if you're going to try and kill all of them, you'll need strong stats in each of your combat stats. I'd recommend 80 at the lowest for any combat style, as below this it is possible, but will take a long time. I'd suggest having at least 70 prayer for rigor, augury, and piety, but you could get away with as low as 43 if you really wanted to. You don't need overloads here, but they do make it much easier. Feel free to either buy or make your potions for this boss. I also don't believe you need summoning here, as you won't be in for a long endurance fight, and you really won't need the damage buff. However, if you want, I'd suggest bringing a combat familiar, as if you're doing everything right, food won't be too much of an issue. For gear and supplies, I managed just fine using War Priest armor from God Wars Dungeon 1. This is a tier 70 hybrid armor, and is really nothing special. If you plan on just camping one of the matriarchs, just bring whatever armor is strongest for that specific type. For weapons, I tend to stay around tier 75 to tier 80. So for mage, I'm using a polypore staff. For range, I'm using a royal crossbow with royal bolts, and for melee, I'm using a lucky chaotic longsword and a blade of Nymora. You don't need this high of weapons for melee, I just didn't have anything else in the bank. But make sure they're pierce weapons, as that will help you tremendously. Looking at your revolution bar, I have a few on screen now that I would suggest, one for each combat style. These are all bars recommended by the PvM Encyclopedia, and have some difficult unlocks on them. If you don't have things like Sunshine, Death Swiftness, Tuskus Wrath, or any of the Mazcab abilities, don't worry about it. They are not required here and you do not need them in your bar. Let's start taking a look at mechanics dino by dino. Starting with the easiest, I think Orikalka takes that spot. This is the red dinosaur in the middle who will attack with melee. She is weak to fire spells, and she is also the only matriarch that can be stunned. Obviously, mage is our go-to here, and you should be using your strongest fire spell, as it will increase your accuracy against her. She has 2 main mechanics that work in tandem with each other. Her first mechanic is a Frost Nova. This will deal high magic damage and affect you with a debuff called Frostbite. This will slow your attack speed and movement speed down for 30 seconds. You can react to the animation of this attack and switch your prayer to mage if you're ready for it to negate the damage by half. Otherwise, you can just take the hit and continue on with your life. The second mechanic is the sinkholes that she will spawn. She will spawn up to 3 sinkholes anywhere around her in a circle. If you're affected by Frostbite and move near one of these, it will cleanse your debuff and give you an adrenaline surge instead, increasing your adrenaline gain and damage for a very short time. You don't have to do this, and if you're starting, I would actually recommend that you don't. You can stand too close to these sinkholes and they will do constant melee damage every tick, which can kill you surprisingly quickly. If you're just learning, I would suggest letting the Frostbite timer run down and avoiding the sinkholes as much as you can. She will use her sinkholes once approximately every 15 to 20 seconds, and will use her Frostbite approximately once every minute and a half. As long as you deal with these mechanics, eventually you will get her down, no problem. Moving on to the medium difficulty in my opinion, is the Mage Matriarch, Pthenthraken. Pthenthraken is a blue dinosaur in the south and is weak to arrows. She attacks with magic and uses lightning attacks as well. I'd strongly suggest bringing a shield switch to this dino, as there are some attacks that can be easily resonance for a large amount of health. If you don't know how to shield switch, I've left a link to one of my videos that will explain it more. Just like Orikalka, Pthenthraken has 2 mechanics that she will use. One is a lightning attack that will draw in lightning bolts towards her in a straight line, and the other is a lightning bolt that she will drop directly on your head. Both of these can be avoided by simply moving out of the way. When she drags the lightning bolts in, you'll see an animation play along the ground, outlining where the bolts will travel. As long as you are out of this line, you will be totally fine. After she draws in these lightning bolts, she will attack you with a high damaging range attack, similar to Vindicta. This attack will always happen after she draws the lightning in, so you can be ready for it and resonance it for a free 3k heal. She will attack with this range attack more frequently than resonance comes off of cooldown, so I'd suggest rotating in a devotion to negate its damage or a debilitate. After the first mechanic, you will see a small countdown timer show up over your head. All you need to do when this bar reaches 0 is move from where you were standing. But it will also give you a buff called Overcharged if you let it hit you a single time. This buff lasts for 30 seconds and gives bonus magic damage on all of your attacks, and reduces your surge cooldown to 0. This buff is nice to have, but it's not necessary, so if getting hit by a lightning bolt doesn't sound good to you, don't do it. These mechanics will continue for the whole boss fight, so just keep dodging out of the way and healing off of that ranged hit. The last dino we haven't covered is the green ranged dino Rathis. Rathis is weak to melee and, more accurately, stab weapons. While Rathis is the easiest in terms of mechanics, I think she is the most difficult in terms of damage output. Rathis' mechanic is that she will call down piles of acid from the sky that will pool onto the ground. The initial hit will deal high range damage, which can be blocked by devotion, debilitate, resonance, or just moving out of the way, and then will deal constant poison damage. The unfortunate part to this is that if you move out of the way, in about 40 seconds, Rathis will consume the poison that is left over into an uber heal. To stop this mechanic, you have to stand in the acid pools to drain them. To do this, it is absolutely necessary to have either a super anti-poison potion or the Venom Blood perk. There will always be 2 acid piles, one that drops directly on you, and one that is slightly out of range. When draining the second one, if you stay out of melee distance for too long, Rathis will charge at you for massive damage. You can avoid this by surging away, so make sure you are ready to do so. Once you get the hang of dealing with the acid, Rathis really isn't that difficult, but if you struggle to deal with the acid, you will not get the kill. Just rinse and repeat this strat every time she calls down acid, and that way she won't heal and you will eventually get the kill. Now let's go through a full kill of each of the Matriarchs. Starting with Orikalka, we go in with Mage and a Polypore staff. I also brought a Guthix staff in case I wanted to deal a little bit extra damage, but that's not required. I do have this at 2x speed because the fight is really simple all things considered, and as long as you deal with the mechanics you should be fine. You notice that I switched my prayer to Mage to block the Frost Nova, and then when the first eruption spawns I surge on over to it and cleanse my debuff. You don't need to do this, but I found it was a little bit more fun that way, and I had a good time trying it. For now, it's just a constant DPS through your revolution, and using Asphyxiate, Deep Impact, and Impact to stun the boss whenever you can. These eruptions will rarely spawn underneath you, so you don't need to worry about them too much, but just be ready to dodge out of the way at a moment's notice. I do get hit by the second Frost Nova, but you can see it doesn't kill me, I just eat back up and I continue on DPSing. I do try and cleanse over here at the eruptions, but I'm too late and I just continue on with my Frostbite, and it's not that big of a deal. You maybe lose 1 ability or 2 throughout the entire duration. I get hit by those sinkholes there and I move away, but since my Protect from Melee is up, I manage to survive just fine, and then I kite back to a safer area. With this, the boss goes down, and I've defeated the first of the 3 Matriarchs, and arguably the easiest. For Pthenthraken, we start the fight with Protect from Mage. We use our Rapid Fire and Snapshot abilities to get some solid damage in, and then we dodge out of the way of the first Lightning Strike. You can see we resonance this first attack here, and then for the countdown bar, we simply just wait in place, and then step out of the way as soon as this hit me. This way I have the buff, and I didn't take very much damage from it. For the second ability I use Devotion, and you can see I'm messing around with my menu a little bit, as I accidentally set it to every time I switch to my Royal Crossbow, it changes my Revolution bar. So if I can do it like that, you can definitely do it without that. I'm just continuing to handle the mechanics the way we talked, and moving out of the way every time there's a little bit of danger. I try and resonance the range attack every time it comes through, and I just continue on DPSing and keeping my health high. Again with this bomb, I just leave it right there and I move off to the side. I continue rotating around and trying to stay away from the middle of the arena so that I don't aggro any of the other Matriarchs. From here it's just rinse and repeat, dodging the same mechanics over and over again, and getting resonances on the ranged attacks whenever I have the opportunity to. Once you get comfortable with this boss, it's really easy and honestly quite a bit of fun to just walk around and dodge the mechanics and see the big flashy lightning bolts. You can see that parts of this fight almost start to look identical as I start to dodge in the same directions every time, and it gets into kind of a pattern. You can see as the health gets lower, I just finish off the boss with some thresholds whenever I can, and it's really just that simple. Rapid fire into snapshots, and the boss goes down, completing our second of the 3 Matriarch kills. And here we have Rathis, the last of the Matriarchs we haven't covered. Rathis doesn't do a lot of damage with their normal auto attacks, but will do a lot of damage with the acid, so watch out for that. We use Devotion on the first acid pool so that the range attack deals 0 damage to us, and then we stand in it with our super anti-poison active so we can tank it out. Then we move over to the second one, and we stand in the middle so it goes away. Unfortunately, we can't attack Rathis here, so we just have to tank it. When they charge at us, we use Surge to get away, and then from there, it's just rinse and repeat all the way to the end. You can see that they healed 0 from the acid pools, and that means that their health will not replenish throughout the rest of the fight. I'm just letting my Revolution Bar do the work, and it's going to take Rathis down eventually. It's important to use Pierce against this boss as it will really help your accuracy, and that way you won't splash as much when trying to DPS down. I again use Devotion to block the acid pool ranged hit, and then I stand in it to make it go away. I do the same thing with the second one, so that it goes away, and I get ready to surge as soon as Rathis decides to charge at me. Now I'm just using thresholds to get the damage done. And letting my Revolution Bar do all of the work. And just like that, all 3 of the Rex Matriarchs have been defeated in low tier gear with Revolution. If you enjoyed the guide, please consider giving it a like, and if you like more than one of my guides, please consider subscribing. I recently started a Discord channel, so the link for that will be in the description. Feel free to come stop by and ask any PvM questions you want. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Zingy out.